Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Harmonics. I'm Gregory Correa, and I got a very special guest that does dream pop or pop. His name is Roberto
Burgos.
That sounds great, man. Where's that from? Where's your last name from, brother?
It's Spanish. It comes from a town in Spain, the town Burgos, which supposedly has like the best cycling laws in the entire European continent.
Really?
Yeah, supposedly.
Well, welcome to the show, and we're gonna go for the next 25 minutes or so, just hanging out, just talking about what you do.
Okay.
I listen to your music, and it's quite interesting. It's quite advanced, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So, tell me first, how did you actually get into this kind of music? And what all that you use? You have a partner, Valerie Cooper, couldn't be here today, but all the different things and techniques. Tell me about that, and how did you get into it?
It all started with a 4-track and wanting to do as much recordings and try to pack as many sounds into a 4-track, and just sort of like with the very limited gear that we had, we tried to push it as hard as we could to get the sounds that we were hearing in our heads. We always had an idea of creating pop music that was orchestral in some way or another. But we didn't have violins, we didn't have cellos, we didn't have horns and things like that. But what we had were guitars and synthesizers and guitar pedals. And so we just said like, screw all this other stuff, let's just try to do it this way. It eventually evolved the experimenting evolved more and more and more to the point where we just like forgot about the original idea of doing orchestral things, and then just using what we had to create the sounds that we were hearing in our heads. We have been influenced by bands like shoegaze bands like My Bloody Valentine, Slow Dive, but also a lot of electronic music like the Aphex Twin. We used to go to raves a lot.
Okay, I can understand that. That's cool.
And so like we were sort of like, we had a foot here, we had a foot there, and it just made sense for us to just kind of like combine it, because that was what we loved a lot back in the 90s. And
so when you did this, how old were you, Roberto, when you actually started this? I mean, we're hearing these sounds in your head. How old were you? When did you actually know that you were heading in a direction where you're hearing these sounds? Where did it start at?
That's a good question. So we started right after high school, but I think that we realized that was the direction that we wanted to go into maybe 4 years after. So I'll say like mid to sort of late 90s or so. We must have been like 19, 20, 21 or so. Yeah.
So you were saying 4 tracks, and when you say 4 tracks to me, I think of the recording in the 60s, and like then there's albums like the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, where they just loaded all of it in there, and George Martin helping the Beatles do that. And then you listen to the Stones when they started doing Symphonic Majestic Requests. Same thing, they're just load. When you're saying you were loading it down into the 4-track that you guys were doing, was it just guitars, and you had pedals? What kind of pedals were you using at that time? Delay, reverb. What were you guys actually moving on that?
Yeah, I mean, our pedals were really basic. Like you said, delay, and anything that created big spaces, choruses, phasers. We love phasers. Lots of distortion pedals and things like that. So those were the pedals that we were using at the time, and we still use them. Like
really?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So when you say we, is that with Valerie, or did you have other collaborators with you at that particular time? Collaborations with different guys coming in, or girls, or whatever you had. What other musicians? How many other people are involved in this whole work that you do that I just find fascinating, very fascinating? It should be heard more.
Oh, thank you. When we first started, we were 3. It was, me, Valerie, and our friend Viet. who was playing drums at the time. When we decided to switch to a more electronic format, he switched to bass. And then eventually we added other members in the lineup. And so to your previous question, it was me and Valerie just pushing our pedals. We had the pedals, we had like our effect units, and that's what we were using to create sounds.
So you're just at home or in a studio somewhere, just like you're creating it on the moment, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then when you were doing that, when you were creating, then you added lyrics at the same time, or you just waited till the next, I mean, when you're doing a 4-track, there's only 4 tracks.
Yeah.
And you guys are, this music that I heard just recently, like We Drive Into the Sun, how many tracks were that?
Oh, well, okay. So that's not a 4-track recording. No.
Yeah, that is, yeah. So when you were really, it was primitive when you first started.
Yeah, it was very primitive when we first started. We had a 4-track, so we had 4 little sections where we could record audio. What we'll do is we will record as much as we could in those 4 tracks. We'll bounce to a cassette, and then we'll take the mix from the cassette back into the 4-track, and we have 2 more tracks to fill in, and then we just kept going back and forth like that.
Yes.
And it was just very random because once you commit something to cassette, you can't undo it again.
Right.
So there was a lot of DIY, sort of like pray to the Lord that this sounds good type of thing.
It's really, to tell you the truth, it's quite amazing what 2 individuals could do, and you're pushing a limit. It isn't the conventional way of doing things, but what you're doing is exactly what the innovators would do. Miles Davis, of course, Turntine, all the great artists. You are following a road that kind of is, it's beyond just the traditional music that we look at, right?
Yeah.
So I like what you guys are doing, but I want to talk to you about, so your name is Sweet Trip.
Yep.
It just made me smile when Taryn told me that, hey, I got this band, and he goes, it's not a band, it's 2 people. What got you, why did you name yourself Sweet Trip?
So I'm originally from Panama, and so when I was a kid, my older cousins and like older friends and who were exposed to more adult things like drugs and alcohol and all those things, they had a slang word for LSD, which in Spanish, in Panama, in Spanish, it translates to the tasty trip.
Say it in Spanish.
El viaje sabroso.
Excelente. Excelente.
It always stuck with me because I always thought it was really ridiculous and really funny. And so when we got together and when we started to develop our sound and getting comfortable with each other, playing music and all this stuff, all those cassettes that we were recording, I will label them. I wanted to label them the Tasty Trip, but I didn't think tasty sounded and looked good, so I just switched it to sweet.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's great. So it actually started when you were in Panama. So you were a young fella, like you said.
Yeah, well, no, we started in the Bay Area.
Okay, in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So do you play an instrument too?
I do. I play the guitar, play bass. I can play the keyboard with 1 finger.
That's okay, man. A lot of people do just 1 finger. So when you play, are you tuning it in standard or are you tuning it in D? Standard.
Standard.
So you're E, A, G, B, E.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, so when you're doing your chords, is it a progression of some sort? What kind of progression do you do? Usually the standard 1-4-5 with a minor 7th, how it goes in. What do you guys do? You just use different formats or pick from, like, say if you're playing in A, where are you guys moving in that key?
I think our chord progressions are very classic, very standard chord progressions. There's, there might be some occasions where we might throw in some like diminished something, or something jazzy here and there, but everything I think is pretty basic, pretty like the foundation is classic pop. But one thing that we like to do is that we love open strings, and we also like to figure out different voicings for those chords, so that instead of just playing bar chords or playing your standard chords, you figure out some other way to play the same chord somewhere else in the fretboard. And and including the open strings as well. And I think that creates a really nice harmonic bed for melodies and things like that.
Different ways to play different chords on the neck where you get different sounds, and that's what Hendrix used to do too.
Yeah.
Getting this sound. You know, have you ever read anything about Jimmy? Jimmy would actually say, I had a friend that actually took lessons from Jimmy.
Cool.
And people would make fun of Jimmy. They used to call him Marbles because he was hearing stuff like you just said earlier in the interview, that you were hearing stuff in your mind, in your head. That's exactly what he was, because no one heard. When Jimmy came out, everybody was going like, it was like the same thing with Eddie Van Halen.
Right.
You know, what are they, how do these do these, you know, they do this. And and that's interesting that you guys are doing almost the same stuff, following that path of innovators.
Without being virtuosos, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. So when you're writing, who does most of the lyrical writing, the songs? Like, because your melodies there are so different. It's so rich to me. Who does most of the singing, and who writes your lyrics?
So I guess I take a big chunk of the duties on that. That said, there's always been a collaboration between me and Valerie. There's a back and forth, so like it doesn't really matter who starts something. The most important thing is the feedback that we can bounce off each other to see what actually works and what doesn't work.
Yes.
So I mean, I guess to answer your question, technically, I do the bulk of it. But to me, like more importantly, it's just what happens after a song is written, how like we together figure out how to make it sound and fit and all that.
So your picture that you and Valerie have of We Drive Into the Sun, love the title.
Cool, thank you.
Love the title. So when I read the title and then I heard the music, I was thinking of Sun Ra. What made you do a title like that, We're Driving to the Sun, and the song is so beautiful? What made you come up with that?
So the song is, the song is about sort of like taking a chance, just taking a gamble, trying something out completely new, even if it's scary or daunting in whatever way. And so I always picture, to drive into the sun, that will be a beautiful thing, to see the sun in real life. But you'll probably get burned and die fairly quickly.
Of course you would.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, that is what the song is about, basically. Take a chance, let's do this crazy thing together. But yes, there is danger ahead. If there's possible danger ahead, and that's kind of what it means.
Surviving a Smile, another great tune.
Thank you. That is, it is kind of like surviving a smile. Like when you see a person with a beautiful smile and you just want to like drop dead because it's that captivating. That's really it.
It really is. If you smile at somebody, chances are 90% of the time they'll smile back.
Right.
So that's what I was basically hearing with you. That's what I felt. Let's go this one. Chapters.
Chapters. I don't think that necessarily has a meaning behind it. Yeah, I'm not really sure what that one is about. There are times where we just come up with titles because we feel that it fits the song. And maybe unconsciously it means something, or it carries the meaning of the song in a high level. And sometimes we don't analyze what that high level is. Sometimes so.
Snow Purple Treasures. I felt like there was all these rubies or something I was looking at. When I was listening to it, I'm going, I want to find that treasure. Beautiful.
Thank you. Snow. So snow calls winter, and winter is kind of a peaceful season. We both like winter a lot. It's probably like one of our favorite seasons.
It's a great time.
Absolutely. And so, in that whole scene, the whole imagery of just like white capes covering all over the ground, and this is really beautiful. The purple part comes from swelling. So, when you get bruised and something swells in your body, it turns purple. I mean, I have a purple finger right
there. You go. Yes. Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. Yeah.
And so, I guess the idea is to find a swollen heart that looks purple, filled with love in this beautiful landscape of snow. Something unique, so unique that you consider it a treasure.
Interesting. So we talked earlier about another song, Pretending. Another, I love how you just a few words, obviously all titles are a few words, but when you hear Pretending, another thing, again, it's how you compress so much going into that song. It's amazing. It's amazing. And now, is that both you singing or just you?
That is mainly Valerie. I believe that I'm doing some backup vocals in there, but it's mainly her. Yeah.
And you wrote the lyrics also?
I wrote the lyrics, yeah.
Interesting. So while you're going through all of this, what you're doing right now with this, Sweet Trip, what is the direction are you going to continue pushing the line, or what do you foresee in your future?
I don't know. I mean, for one thing, we will like to continue making music, but it's really hard to say what a Sweet Trip song or album or record will sound like in the future, because we usually don't really plan things out. We don't sit down like at a corporate meeting where you say like, okay, our next record is gonna sound like this and like that and like that. Things just kind of happen. So it's really hard to say, what our sound is gonna be like, say
At any time
at all. Yeah.
So it's almost like improvisation. It's like wide open then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have so many different influences that we can tap into, and we don't shy away from them. And so, like, at any time, tomorrow we could write an acoustic song, and then the next day it can just be like a totally crazy electronic thing, and maybe the next day it might be something that hints to heavy metal. Who knows?
Exactly. So where do you guys play at? Where do you perform, or you just perform at different places? Where do you perform at?
So we haven't performed in quite a while.
And where did you before?
Before, we used to perform, so before we were based in San Francisco, so we used to play in San Francisco a lot, like the typical places, the
Nice.
Independent,
Oh, okay.
that used to be called the Justice League back in the 90s, the Elbow Room, the Knockout.
Of
the
course,
Knockout
of
Room,
course,
all
yeah.
those places, yeah.
I was just past there the other day in San Francisco. My
cool.
wife for that. What's that? I go, it's a nightclub.
Nice.
So were you guys louder than? I mean, I'm listening to it on the computer, so you guys have to be loud and make a presence of yourself, right? Or is it mediocre, medium sound, not high level, or are you giving out that energy like what I feel when I'm listening to it?
Well, we like to think that we do. We can be loud, but not like ear-splitting loud. We try to balance things as much as we can. To me, like, volume is really important. That's it. Yeah.
So you get that clarity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because you really don't have to. That's why acoustic music. I mean, we look to the greats and people. Acoustic music, it doesn't have to be loud.
Right.
Rock music is a different thing. Your genre, you're probably in the middle, you'd probably say, or would you just keep it so that people could actually feel it a little bit differently?
I will say somewhere in the middle. I mean, but there are parts in our music and there are parts in our live sets that get really intense and really washy as far as sound is concerned, and that's just the nature of the song at the time. But aside from that, we want things to be leveled, sort of in the middle tier.
So when I was listening, because I listened to it a couple times because I really liked it. It was We Drive Into the Sun. I really like that the most, to me. I mean, I could listen to more. I will listen to more going back. Cool. But I actually, it was transporting me into a different kind of feeling. It was just, I closed my eyes when I listened to it, because sometimes that's great. Miles Davis could always say that when you turned your back and listened to a band, you could hear it better. So I did that. And your music just kind of grabbed me. It's almost like seeing colors. And when I mean colors, it's not like visual colors, like I'm really seeing that. It's the colors, the different layers that you have that they just kind of like, when you pop a champagne bottle and it goes all over the place sometimes?
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. It felt, it was effervescence.
Yeah.
It was really striking to me because, your music is so new to my ear. I've heard electronic music before, and it's kind of like, you know, it's fast. It's This was totally different. It had a melody, and your words are meaningful in it.
Cool.
You know. So in your process now, is Valerie still with the with you guys? Are you still collaborating?
Yeah, we still are. We just have to figure out the logistics of how to do that. 'Cause we're not, Valerie's no longer in the East Bay, because we were both based in Oakland. But yeah, we're still together, and we just need to figure it out. Yeah.
So what is your direction now? Since are you going to continue what you're doing, or going solo?
No, we're going to continue what we're doing. I've always been very strong about this opinion, well, not us, but this statement that Sweet Trip is me and Valerie, and if one of us is out of the picture, there is no Sweet Trip. And I feel really strongly about it. So if someday in the future one of us passes away or whatever,
Right.
That's the end of it. That's really the end of it. Yeah.
Well, you know, today's you've given such an insight to something's new to me, and I've been since I heard the sounds of music when I was a little boy, and to hear your music, I am glad there's people like you. I consider you an innovator.
Oh, thank you.
And you just got to get it out more.
Yeah.
You know, you got to soundtracks, even something that is so it's just so different to me in my ear. And I'm glad you're on a guest. If you want to say anything to Valerie or any of your friends that are going to be watching this soon, I consider you an innovator.
Thank you.
Because it is, you should be listened to more.
Thank you.
You know, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's
fun.
You know, it's just nice to have somebody that has something completely different to bring to the table. You know, we all have potluck dinners, right? We all been in potluck dinners. I love potluck dinners because you get an opportunity to taste everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing what you're doing. You brought something to the table, in my mind, that needs to be heard, and you're a very talented individual.
No, thank you.
You know, and
Thank you so much.
yeah, and thank you for coming. What we normally do, we'll look at camera number 2, and we like to say thank you all to all the people that watch Harmonics. Thank you for Roberto for coming here today. This is Gregory Correa. Once again, I'm wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving. I'd like to thank all the crew that helps me. You know, Taryn, Sue Joy, Chad, and there's so many other people in the background that has made this show so popular. I'd like to also thank Gary Carter, who is the man that actually seen the future and gave me this opportunity to be in here. I'm very thankful for all of us, and peace and love to everybody. God bless everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. Peace.
Bye.